Hello everyone. Please tell me, which city are you listening from? What time is it there? Is everything okay? Or does it feel like someone's watching you? It started slowly. At first, it was a low hum, barely noticeable. You know, the kind you hear when you put your noise-canceling headphones on and forget to play anything. That quiet, static warmth. That's all it was. I told myself it was just the electronics. But it didn't stop. I work night shifts, editing audio for an indie podcast studio. The pay isn't great, but the solitude suits me. I live alone in a modest apartment on the 5th floor of an old building. Nothing fancy, just enough to breathe. I've always worked at night. It's quieter. You can hear things better. Or at least you're supposed to. The first time I noticed the voice, it was just past 2 a.m. I was reviewing a client's recording. Something about haunted castles or unsolved disappearances. My headphones' high-end, closed-back monitors were supposed to be perfect for catching subtle glitches or noise. But instead, I heard something else, a whisper, too soft to make out, layered beneath the host's narration. I thought maybe it was an artifact, some background noise, or microphone bleed. I paused the file, scrubbing back, replayed the same 10 seconds. Silence. I removed my headphones. Silence. I leaned back, rubbing my temples. Long hours and caffeine do strange things. Maybe I was tired. Maybe my brain was inventing sounds from the static. I laughed it off. But the next night, the whisper returned. Louder this time. It wasn't part of the file. It came after I stopped the recording. I took off the headphones in panic. Still nothing in the room, but the whispering, I could still hear it, like an echo that hadn't been given permission to exist. It was fading, but unmistakable. I checked my system, ran diagnostics, switched headphones, updated drivers. I even played white noise tracks to isolate the issue. No whispering. Until 2 a.m. every night, around the same time, it started again. A whispering pattern that didn't match anything I had open. And it wasn't in my system files. I unplugged the internet, switched off everything except the editing software. Still, the voices came. They weren't words at first, just breathy, uneven murmurs. But they grew clearer. Don't leave behind you. Can you hear me? Closer. The night I heard my name, Nathan, I froze. Nobody knew I was working. These hours. Nobody had access to my files. Nobody should know my name, in a whisper inside my own head. I unplugged the headphones immediately, but the sound, it didn't stop. I slammed the headphones on the desk and stumbled into the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. In the mirror, I looked pale, eyes wide, bloodless behind me. The hallway was empty, but it looked darker than usual, as if the light bulbs were dimming in protest. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I packed the headphones away and used cheap earbuds instead. But even then, faint voices leaked in. I changed apartments, new city, new studio, new devices. But the voices followed. They didn't care about hardware. They weren't in the headphones. They were using them. One night, frustrated, I said out loud, "What do you want?" There was silence, then static, and through the hiss, a chuckle. A slow, raspy, amused sound. Feminine, cold. "You brought me here," it said. "You opened the door. I Remembered something then. A podcast I edited weeks before the whispering began. An interview with a woman who claimed her house was haunted by sound, not ghosts, she said. Frequencies. She spoke of cursed audio, of echoes left behind by people who didn't pass on correctly. People who clung to sound, who survived. And vibrations, riding signals like parasites. I thought she was delusional. I removed her interview from the final cut. Deleted the raw audio, or thought I did. I checked my archives. There it was. Cursed frequencies uncut. WAV size, 0 bytes, date modified, every night at 2 a.m. I couldn't delete it. The system said the file was in use. I threw my laptop into the dumpster that morning, bought a new one, avoided headphones, but it didn't matter. One night, just as I lay in bed, exhausted, trying to live normally again, my Bluetooth speaker completely disconnected, turned on by itself. The same whisper, put them back on. I didn't sleep again for 3 days. Eventually, I gave in. I put the headphones on at 2 a.m., sat at my desk, and let the voices speak. I don't remember everything they said, only that time passed differently. Hours slipped like sand, and my apartment felt further and further away. The static became my breath, the whispering, my heartbeat. Now, they speak constantly, softly during the day, louder at night. They don't ask me to do anything anymore. They know I'm listening, and the worst part, sometimes I hear myself whispering back, I don't know how long I've been like this. Days, weeks. The mirrors have stopped showing my face. I don't work anymore. I don't eat much, but I still wear the headphones. Not because I want to. Because I'm afraid of what I'll hear without them. When it's silent, it's worse. There's only one rule now. Never take them off. Not at night. Not at 2 a.m. Because if I do, I might hear the real world again, and I'm not sure I belong there anymore. It started with a blink. The kind of blink you don't even notice, just a pause in vision. A shudder of the eyes, and yet everything changes. That night, I was lying in bed, half asleep, with the soft hum of the ceiling fan swirling lazily above me. My apartment was quiet, exactly how I liked it. No TV, no music. Just the silence of a well-earned evening after work. But when I closed my eyes, she was there. Not in a dream. Not in some flickering, imagined shadow. No. She was there behind the lids of my eyes, like a painting burned into the inside of my skull. A woman, standing still. Pale face. Long black hair, matted like it had never dried properly. She didn't move. She didn't blink. Her dress looked damp, clinging to her figure. She just stood in the corner of my mind like she was waiting for something. I snapped my eyes open, heart pounding. The room was the same. Fan humming. Streetlight glow spilling gently through the curtains. I laughed nervously. I told myself it was a dream, a sleep-deprived flicker. But the image didn't fade. Even with my eyes open, I could still feel her presence lingering just beyond my vision, like she was behind me. But every time I turned, there was nothing. The next night, I didn't sleep. I kept the lights on and stayed up reading. But even when I blinked even for a moment, she was there. Her image now sharper, her eyes wider. It wasn't just an illusion anymore. It was her. And she was starting to notice me, noticing her. I tried sleeping with my eyes open. I know how insane that sounds, but I did. Every time my eyelids drooped, her figure returned, and each time she stood closer. At first, she was across the room, in my mind's eye, then by the window, then beside my bed. 3 nights in, I gave up on sleep altogether. I started researching sleep hallucinations, found articles about sleep paralysis, hypnagogic visions, even stress-induced psychosis. But nothing quite matched what I was seeing. Those were momentary things. This was constant. She was with me even in daylight now. If I blinked too long, I'd see her swaying in a hallway or standing behind strangers. And now she was starting to move. She began tilting her head. The first time she did that, I screamed. I wasn't asleep. I was on the subway, surrounded by people, and I closed my eyes just for a moment. And there she was, tilting her head slowly, like she was learning me. Her lips began to part. I couldn't hear anything, but I could feel it. She was trying to say my name, or something close to it. Her mouth didn't form words, just opened and opened, too wide, too wrong. People stared at me on the train, holding my head and gasping. I couldn't explain to them that someone was crawling into my mind. I visited a doctor. I lied and said I was seeing faces in dreams that felt real. He nodded, gave me pills, sedatives. I took one the next night. It didn't knock me out. It just made her clearer. That night she walked. She didn't tilt her head anymore. She looked straight into me. When I shut my eyes, she was no longer across the room in my vision. She was in front of me, reaching. Her hand touched my face, and I felt it. It wasn't imaginary. It was cold, wet. The kind of wet that leaves your skin damp long after the water's gone. My heart skipped. I opened my eyes, but the cold stayed. From that point on, she started showing up before I even closed my eyes. I'd turn a corner in my apartment, and she'd be standing at the edge of the mirror, visible only if I wasn't looking directly at her. If I tried to sleep, she'd wait behind my eyes. If I tried to rest, she'd hum. She hums, not a tune, not a melody, just 3 notes, like a nursery rhyme broken into pieces. I began keeping all the lights on. I taped my eyelids open once, just to keep her away, but even with dry, burning eyes, the second my vision blurred, she stepped forward. She wanted something. I don't know what. I moved out of my apartment, thinking maybe it was the space. Maybe the walls were soaked in something cursed. I found a new place in the city. Clean, new, bright. I painted everything white. No shadows, no mirrors. It didn't matter. She came with me. Now I can feel her even when I speak. In my voice. In the pauses between breaths. I hear faint dripping sounds in rooms without plumbing. I wake up with damp hair, even though my bed is dry. Last night, I tried a sleep mask. I thought if I could trick my mind, maybe I could stop seeing her. But it was worse. I closed my eyes, and this time, she was sitting on my chest, breathing, not heavily, softly, as if she belonged there. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I felt her hair brushing against my face. Her eyes locked on mine. And then she whispered something, not words, just a sound. And I swear I understood it. She said, "You see me now. You can't unsee me." When I opened my eyes, my pillow was soaked, not sweat. Water, cold, earthy water, like it came from a flooded grave. I don't think she ever left wherever she came from. I think she's in me now. in the darkness that exists just behind the eyelids. The space we never question. The silence behind the blink. You don't believe me. You think I'm sick. But tonight, when you lie down, and you close your eyes, and you think you're alone, you might see her too. Because I think she's looking for someone else now. Someone new. Someone like you. It was 3:47 a.m. when I opened my eyes. The first thing I noticed was the light. A dim, cold, bluish light, like the glow of the moon, spilled through an unfamiliar window. I stared up at the ceiling for several seconds, still groggy, trying to place where I was. My room didn't have wooden beams above me. My curtains were navy blue, not off-white. My bed was firm, not soft and sunken like this one, and I definitely didn't have wallpaper that looked like fading roses peeling at the edges. My body sat up before my mind fully accepted what I was seeing. I reached for my phone on the bedside table. Except there wasn't one. No lamp either. Just a blank wooden surface coated in dust. That's when the unease set in. This wasn't my bedroom. This wasn't my house. I stood up, my bare feet hitting the cold wooden floor. It creaked loudly under me. The sound echoed too much, like the room was emptier than it appeared. I walked to the window, hoping to see my street, my car, anything familiar. What I saw instead was fog, endless. Fog and trees. Not the ones near my home. These were tall, dead-looking things, clustered thickly together. Nothing moved outside. No wind, no insects, no stars. I turned around to scan the room. It was plain and old, with antique furniture pushed against the walls. A mirror in the corner was covered in a thick beige cloth, like someone didn't want to look into it. There was a closed door on the far end. I moved toward it, gripping the cold brass handle. Locked. Of course it was. That's when I noticed the small detail that made my breath catch. The bed I had just slept in had restraints attached to it. Leather ones, with tarnished buckles. 4 of them, one at each corner. And each one had deep stretch marks on the leather like someone had struggled violently against them. I backed away slowly. This wasn't a hotel. This wasn't a dream. This was something else entirely. I whispered, "Hello." No answer. I moved toward the mirror and pulled the cloth off, and froze. It wasn't my reflection staring back. It looked like me. Same face, same height, but his expression was completely wrong. He looked calm, too calm. His eyes didn't blink when mine did. In fact, they didn't blink at all. Then he smiled. Only his mouth moved. Mine didn't. I stumbled backward. The cloth slipped from my hand and fell onto the floor. When I looked again, the mirror was empty. No reflection at all. That was the first time I heard it. The sound is perpented. The sound, a low muffled scratching, not from the walls or the floor, from beneath. The bed, I didn't want to look. Every instinct screamed not to look, but I did. I dropped to the floor and peered underneath. Nothing, just dust, cobwebs and weight. A finger, thin, pale, and impossibly long. It slowly curled inward, beckoning. I shot to my feet, backing toward the door. Suddenly, the door creaked open, just an inch. I held my breath. A cold gust rolled in, carrying a strange scent. Not decay, not mold, but something sweet like lavender and rot. I stepped forward, reached out, and pushed the door open the rest of the way. What lay beyond wasn't a hallway. It was another bedroom, almost identical to the one I had just been in. Same bed, same mirror, same restraints, except this one had someone lying in the bed. I approached cautiously, step by step. It was a woman, pale, asleep, or so I thought. Her eyes were shut. Her arms were strapped down with the same cracked leather restraints. Her mouth moved slightly, whispering something I couldn't hear. I leaned in. "Don't wake up," she said. I stepped back immediately. Her eyes snapped open wide and glassy. She stared through me. Her lips kept moving. "Don't wake up, don't wake up, don't wake up, don't wake up." A sudden scream, not from her, from the other room. I turned to look back, and the bed I had been in was shaking violently. The mattress bulged and twisted like something was trying to push through from beneath. Then, a knock. From inside the wall. Not on it, inside it. 3 slow, rhythmic knocks. I turned and ran out the bedroom door, into a hallway this time. It was long, impossibly long. The wallpaper faded as I moved, curling and burning away with each step I took. The hallway turned sharply, leading to a staircase that spiraled. Downward, I descended, faster and faster. The bottom floor was a replica of my living room. Same couch, same bookshelf, but warped, like a wax figure of my real home. The TV was on static, hissing across the screen. I approached it, drawn by some unseen pull. The screen changed. It showed a live feed of me sleeping. Not the me standing here, but the real me. In my actual bed, at home, curled up and unmoving. Then the image flickered. Something was in the corner of that feed, a shadow, leaning over the sleeping version of me, watching, breathing. Suddenly, the figure in the video turned toward the camera and smiled. The screen went black. I screamed, hurling a book at the TV. It exploded into shards. Behind me, I heard the scraping again, louder now, coming from all directions. The house was closing in. No doors, no windows. Just walls and mouths, breathing. I turned, spinning, looking for an exit. When I saw the staircase again, this time leading up, I ran. I didn't care where it led. Step after step, the house grew narrower. The ceiling came down. The floor shifted. My lungs burned. My legs trembled. I reached the top. A door stood there. On it, a plaque. Room 3, wake up. I pushed it open, and gasped. It was my room, my real room. The bed, the window, the blue curtains. I fell into the bed, panting, heart racing. Everything was real again. It smelled like my detergent. I grabbed my phone. 3:01 a.m., I whispered. It's over. Thank God, it's over. Then I looked at the window, and realized it wasn't fog outside. It was wallpaper. Wallpaper of fog. I blinked. The mirror in the corner didn't show me. It showed the woman again, still strapped to the bed, still whispering, and she was staring directly at me. "Don't wake up," she mouthed. I looked down. I was strapped in, and the restraints were tightening. I moved into the new apartment last month. It wasn't perfect. Old tiles, creaky pipes, and walls thin enough to hear the neighbors sneeze, but it was mine. After years of couch surfing and short-term rentals, the thought of having a place where I could lock the door and breathe was comforting. That morning felt like any other. Gray light seeped through the blinds, and the air was cold against the tiles. I walked to the bathroom half awake. toothbrush dangling from my mouth. I didn't even glance at the mirror at first, my eyes too lazy to meet their own reflection. I was humming something I don't remember what. The kind of half-song your mind carries from sleep into waking. Then I looked up. She was standing behind me, just behind my right shoulder, not moving, not blinking, not me. A girl, pale skin, wet hair that clung to her cheeks, wearing a white hospital gown with faint gray stains. Her face wasn't angry. She wasn't screaming. She was just watching. Her eyes were wide and glossy, like someone who had forgotten how to sleep. And her lips were parted slightly, as if frozen mid-breath. I turned instantly. No one was there. My heart thundered in my chest. I leaned against the sink, my toothbrush falling into it. The mirror showed nothing now but me sweating, confused, and suddenly wide awake. It must have been sleep, I thought. Leftover dream fragments. That happens, right? Sleep paralysis, imagination, stress. That night, I stayed up late trying to convince myself of that. I even laughed about it on a call with my friend Adam. But I stopped laughing when it happened again. The next day, same time, same place, I was brushing my teeth, trying not to think about her. I stared into the mirror, deliberately, like daring it to do something. The mirror stayed normal. But the moment I looked down to spit, I caught movement in the corner of my eye. I looked up, and she was there again, closer this time. I saw more detail, the redness around her eyes, her chapped lips, the way one hand twitched slightly like she was trying to move but couldn't. I spun around empty again, only this time, something was different. The towel on the hook had fallen to the floor, and I never touched it. That night, I dreamt of the mirror, not the bathroom, just the mirror, floating in a dark room with nothing but the sound of a faint, slow drip, and behind the glass, she stood. But in the dream, she saw me before I saw her. She pressed her hand against the inside of the mirror, and I felt it on my cheek. I woke up gasping, my skin cold and damp where she had touched. The days that followed blurred. I became obsessed with mirrors, covering them, removing them, avoiding my reflection. I stopped using the bathroom light. I shaved in the kitchen. But somehow, she found new ways to appear. In the screen of my phone when it went black. In the glass of the microwave. Once, in the reflection of a spoon. Always behind me. Never speaking. Just watching. I started recording myself while brushing my teeth, needing to prove I wasn't losing my mind. But the recordings showed nothing, only me, brushing in silence, nervous and sweating. But one time, after the camera shut off, I swear I heard something. A breath that wasn't mine, soft and wet. I checked everywhere. I even called the landlord, asked if anyone had died here. He hesitated, said no, then paused again. But the lady upstairs, he muttered. She used to talk about seeing someone in the mirror. Thought it was a ghost. She eventually left. I asked where she lived. Apartment 3B. The same one I'm living in now. I barely slept that night. I kept every light on, sat facing the mirror, determined not to blink. And just before 3 a.m., she peered again, not in the mirror this time, but in the hallway. She didn't walk. She stood there, facing me, and then shifted, not like a person moves, but like a static image flickering closer. I didn't see her take steps. but every time I blinked, she was nearer. The lights began to dim, not flicker, just dim, and for the first time, I heard her voice. A whisper, barely audible, like breath sliding over glass. "Don't forget." Me. My skin prickled. I didn't know what she meant. Forget who? Forget what? She looked so familiar suddenly. Something in her eyes. Something too human. Then I remembered. When I was a child, maybe 6 or 7, I had a friend. Not real. My parents had said just imaginary. A girl I used to talk to in the mirror. I called her May. We'd laugh, mimic each other, play games. But one day, I told her I was growing up, that I wouldn't need her anymore. I stopped playing the game. I stopped looking in mirrors at night. And I forgot her, until now. And now. She remembers, but she's not angry, not vengeful, just lonely, forgotten, stuck in a place where time doesn't move, and no one looks her way. She doesn't want to hurt me. She just doesn't want to be alone anymore. I see her now in every reflection, every night. And I've stopped being afraid, because maybe this time, I won't look away. Maybe this time, I'll listen. And maybe this time, I won't forget her. It was supposed to be a normal night. I'd had dinner, watched an episode of my show, and fell asleep around midnight. I remember that clearly. I even remember the weight of my blanket as I pulled it over me, the familiar squeak of my old mattress, the soft hum of my ceiling fan turning above me. But when I opened my eyes the next morning, everything was wrong. The ceiling was unfamiliar smooth, pale blue. The air smelled different, like dried flowers and old paper. The light filtering through the curtains wasn't mine. It wasn't even morning light. It had a kind of dim, sepia tone and natural, as if the sun outside was fading instead of rising. I sat up slowly. The bed was not mine. It was softer. The sheets were floral and ironed. The walls were covered in faded wallpaper, lined with strange old paintings. One of a woman with no face. Another of a staircase leading into blackness. I wasn't in my room. Panic flared in my chest, cold and wild. I leaped from the bed, stumbling barefoot onto the wooden floor. I shouted, "Hello," but my voice sounded muffled, like the walls were swallowing it. There was no answer. I checked the door. It opened easily, revealing a hallway. Everything was in muted colors. The carpet was olive green, the light bulbs dim, the wallpaper peeling at the corners like skin from an old wound. I had never seen this place before in my life, but somehow, it felt like I had. Somewhere deep in my bones, I felt it. The creak of the floorboards under my steps, the scent of dust and lavender. It all felt strangely familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. I walked down the hallway, trying to find an exit. There were no windows, just door after door, each closed, each silent. I opened one, a bedroom with an empty crib. I opened another, a bathroom. The mirror fogged though. There was no steam in the mirror. My reflection looked back, but something was wrong. My eyes were blinking slower. Off rhythm, I stared harder. My chest was rising, but in the mirror, it wasn't. I turned away quickly. My breath was shallow, like the air was getting thinner. I found a staircase and descended into what looked like a living room. There was a fireplace that hadn't been lit in years, and dusty furniture draped in white sheets. An old rotary phone sat on a table. I picked it up, praying for a dial tone. Instead, I heard static, and then a voice, low and whispering. "You shouldn't be awake." I dropped the phone, then came a thud upstairs. Slow, deliberate, like footsteps. I backed away, heart pounding, and ducked behind the couch. I waited, barely breathing. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs, then stopped. Silence. I peeked. No one. Then, the TV turned on by itself. It wasn't plugged in. On the screen, static, then a faint image. Me, lying in bed, tossing, turning, talking in my sleep. The timestamp said, tomorrow. I blinked rapidly, unable to process what I was seeing. The image zoomed slowly onto my face as I lay sleeping, lips moving. I read them. Don't let her in. A cold breeze touched my neck. I turned. Nothing. I needed to get out. I ran to the front door, locked, the windows sealed, every escape denied. Then I noticed something else. The photos on the walls had changed. They were now of me. Me brushing my teeth. Me reading a book. Me eating. Everyday moments. Except I wasn't alone in them. In each picture, just behind me, partially hidden, there was someone else. A woman. Tall, long hair, pale face, eyes wide, mouth closed too tight. I had never seen her before, but she was in all of them. Watching me, I turned around. She wasn't there, but I could feel her. The air shifted. The silence deepened. That night, I tried to stay awake. I failed. I woke up again, in the same bed, same house. But this time, the sheets were tucked tighter. The paintings had changed, and on the wall opposite my bed, someone had written, "Every time you wake up, you're further in." Further into what? I wondered again. Same rooms, same locked doors. But now, the hallway felt longer, the air darker. The woman in the paintings now had eyes, and they followed me. I screamed until my throat burned. No one came. No one ever did. I haven't seen a clock in days. Time doesn't move here. I sleep, I wake, and the house reshapes itself. New doors appear, others vanish. Some nights, the bed whispers to me in languages I don't understand. Once, I opened my mouth to create, heard someone else's voice come out. I tried to destroy the bed. It reappeared the next morning. I tried not to sleep, but sleep takes me anyway. And every time I wake, the bed is still there. The woman in the corner is closer. Her face is clearer. I don't know how much longer I can last. If you're reading this this story reaches Uplies. When you go to bed tonight, make sure you wake up in your own. Because once you wake up here, you never truly wake up again. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I noticed wasn't the room, it was the silence. Deep, absolute. Like the world had been padded in cotton. My back ached as if I'd slept on something old and uneven. I shifted, and the sheets beneath me whispered like parchment. That's when the realization struck me. This wasn't my bed. The air didn't smell right. My mattress at home was memory foam, but this one felt stiff, spring-loaded, and oddly damp in places. I sat up quickly, heart starting to pound, and looked around. This wasn't my room. Not even close. The wallpaper was peeling faded yellow with faint floral outlines. The wooden floorboards were a patchwork of stains and dust. A rusted ceiling fan spun slowly overhead, clicking with every rotation. In the corner was a rocking chair still rocking, gently, though the room was completely still. My breath caught. There were no windows, just a single wooden door. I whispered, "Hello," even though I knew no one would answer. My voice sounded wrong in the room, like it didn't belong here. I got out of bed, barefoot hand, felt something soft and wet squish under my heel. I didn't look down. I didn't want to. Instead, I walked to the door. The knob was cold, slick with condensation. I turned it and pulled slowly. A hallway stretched beyond, long and impossibly narrow, with doors lining both sides, none of them marked. A strange hum, like distant static, filled the space. I didn't know which door to choose, so I walked straight ahead. Each step I took made the hallway longer. That's the only way I can describe it. I'd pass a door, then another, and turn back and the previous ones would be gone. The corridor stretched, endlessly rearranging behind me. Eventually, I stopped. That's when I saw the first photo. It hung in the hallway, an old black and white portrait in a cracked frame. A woman, middle-aged, unsmiling, sat with her hands folded. Her eyes were wrong to focused, to clear, like they were watching me. I kept moving, and more photos appeared, dozens, then hundreds, lining the hallway like wallpaper. Men, women, children, all staring straight ahead, all without smiles. I started to run. The hallway didn't end. The hum turned into whispering. They were saying things I couldn't quite make out. But the longer I ran, the clearer they became. Stay still. Don't wake up. She's almost here. My chest tightened. My body felt foreign. I stopped suddenly when I reached a door that looked newer than the rest, clean wood. Brass handle, no dust. I opened it, without thinking. It was a bathroom. My bathroom, from my apartment. Same cracked mirror above the sink. Same blue toothbrush on the counter. For a moment, relief swept over me. I stepped in, looked into the mirror, and froze. My reflection wasn't moving. I blinked, but it didn't. I stepped back, it leaned forward. I stumbled out of the bathroom, slamming the door, breathing hard. That's when I noticed the door beside me had a brass nameplate. It said, "You." I opened it. It was my living room. Down to the couch I napped on yesterday. The same bookshelf. The same photos of my parents, but it was all grayscale, drained of color. I walked in cautiously, sat on the couch. Static filled the TV screen, though I hadn't turned it on. Suddenly, the TV flickered and I saw myself sleeping on the bed I woke up in earlier. The angle looked like it was from above us, if someone was watching from the ceiling. Then, the camera angle zoomed in on my face. I was still asleep, but my mouth, it moved. It whispered, "Don't move. She listens when you move." I stood up and turned. The hallway was gone. Now there was only darkness beyond the door. And breathing, slow, guttural, heavy breathing. I backed away, and the lights dimmed. Every corner of the room became deeper, darker. I heard footsteps behind the walls. The sound of fingernails against wallpaper. A child's giggle, then silence again. In the stillness, I heard a door creak open behind me. I turned. The bed from before was in the center of the room. On it, me. Sleeping, eyes closed. Still, I approached, hands trembling. The sleeping version of me didn't stir. I reached out and touched my shoulder. The body flinched and vanished like smoke. Suddenly, the room dropped into blackness. I woke up again. Same bed, same yellow room, same fan clicking overhead, same soft, wet squish under my foot. But this time, something was different. This time, there was someone sitting in the rocking chair. I could only see her outline. She was small, still, breathing softly. Watching me, I whispered, "Where am I?" She tilted her head. Her voice was a faint whisper in my mind, not out loud. "You never left. You only thought you did." The door creaked again. Only now there was no hallway. Just another room, another bed, another version of me, lying motionless, and beyond that more doors, more beds, endless versions of myself, sleeping in rooms I've never seen, and in each one, she waits. She watches, and I can't wake up, because I never really did. It started on a Sunday night, the kind of quiet where even the fridge seems to breathe slower. Aman had just moved into a modern apartment on the 13th floor of a high-rise. Sleek, minimal, quiet. He liked that. It was perfect for his freelance coding work. No neighbors knocking, no traffic, just him and the low hum of machines. He hadn't fully unpacked yet, but his essentials were set. A mattress on the floor, his MacBook and his iPhone docked on the side table. His first few nights passed peacefully. He stayed up late, coding in the glow of the screen, then fell into deep sleep until Wednesday. That night, he set his alarm for 6:30 a.m. and dozed off around 1 o'clock. At exactly 3:03 a.m., the stillness broke. His iPhone, docked across the room, lit up, and Siri's voice, calm and almost too clear, spoke aloud. "She's here." Aman sat up instantly. He stared at the phone, heart thudding. It hadn't been touched. No "Hey Siri." No accidental activation. Just that phrase. Short, sharp, certain. He got up, grabbed the phone, and asked, "What did you say?" Siri responded with a beep, then silence. No history in the logs. No trigger. Just that one message. He told himself it was a glitch. Maybe something with the update. Maybe a recording error. He powered the phone off and tried to sleep again. But sleep, from that night on, refused to be kind. The following night, again at 3:03, Siri spoke once more. "She's in the hallway." His chest tightened. He didn't move for a full minute. Then he grabbed a flashlight and slowly opened his bedroom door. The hallway was empty, but colder than it should have been. A single draft brushed past his leg, and for a second, he could swear he heard breathing. Not his own. He moved out slowly, checking the apartment room by room. Everything was locked. Curtains unmoved. Windows shut. When he returned to bed, Siri beeped again. "You left the door open." He turned and stared at the phone. His bedroom door, which he had just closed, was open again. Over the next few days, Amon's routine began to fall apart. He stopped sleeping. He started recording his room at night. One of the recordings, from Friday, showed something that made him almost throw his phone across the room. At 3:03 a.m., the recording went static. Then, faintly, the outline of a woman appeared near the corner of the screen. She wasn't moving, just standing. Long dark hair covering her face. Arms limp, head slightly tilted. Then, right before the footage cut again, she turned her head toward the camera. But here's the part that made his stomach twist. There was no reflection of her in the mirror behind. Desperate, he contacted Apple support. They said it wasn't possible. Siri couldn't say custom phrases unless prompted. The phone's logs showed no activity at 3:03. No commands. No recordings. Just nothing. That night, Siri said, "She's under the bed." He didn't move. His mouth went dry. He didn't even look. He lay there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling until morning. When he finally peeked under, nothing was there. But the carpet was warm, like someone had just been lying there. Amen. Started staying out during the night at coffee shops, in his car, anywhere but that room, and it worked, for a while, until Sunday. At exactly 3:03 a.m., while sitting in his car parked near a gas station, his iPhone now placed in the glove compartment lit up and spoke through Siri. "She doesn't like you running." He dropped the phone. The voice had changed slightly. It still sounded like Siri, but layered like two voices speaking at once. One deeper, one breathier, inhuman. He went back home, exhausted, paranoid, losing grip. That night, as he sat in bed, the phone across the room beeped once again. "She wants to be seen." Without thinking, he turned the flashlight on and pointed it toward the mirror across the bedroom. For a split second, he saw her. Not in the mirror, not in front of him, but in both, simultaneously, as if she was standing between reflections. Amon screamed, through the flashlight, and slammed the mirror to the ground. It cracked into 4 jagged pieces, each one still showing her shadow, even though she was gone from the room. He didn't sleep that night. On Monday, Ayman called an exorcist. Father Zahid came, skeptical but willing. He walked through the apartment, muttering prayers, sprinkling holy water. When he reached the bedroom, he stopped cold. The mirror shards reflected nothing, not even him. "I've seen cursed places," he whispered, "but this is a gate." "What gate?" Ayman asked, voice shaking. Father Zahid pointed at the mirror frame, a passage between here and her. "Her who?" The priest didn't answer. That night, Father Zahid insisted on staying. At 3:03, the apartment power cut. A loud static buzz filled the air, Amon. And the priest held candles, as Siri's voice came again. But it didn't speak from the phone. It echoed through the walls. "She's not coming. She's already here." A chill swept through the room. Father Zahid began reciting louder. From the shadows near the cracked mirror, something began to crawl, not walk. Crawl. A pale, faceless woman. Her skin stretched, her limbs long, her body jittering like a broken video. She screeched, a sound like shattered glass scraping metal. The priest shouted louder, but she didn't stop. She moved to Amon. He closed his eyes. Then everything stopped. When he opened them again, the priest was gone. No trace, not a shoe, not a whisper. Only Siri remained. Now Amon is alone again. He doesn't sleep. He doesn't turn off lights. He tried smashing the phone, it still speaks. Every night, at exactly 3:03 a.m., Siri whispers something new. She misses him. She watches you breathe. She likes your eyes. You'll join him soon. He knows one day soon, the message will change again. And it won't be a warning. It will be a final sentence. I never used to remember my dreams, but now, they remember me. It started last Tuesday, the night I decided to sleep early. I wasn't sick. I wasn't stressed. Nothing strange had happened that day. just the usual 9 to 5 grind, an episode of something forgettable on Netflix, and a lukewarm microwave dinner. But when I crawled into bed that night, a strange unease settled over me like a second blanket. Sometime around 2:46 a.m., my phone rang. The sudden vibration on the nightstand startled me awake. I squinted at the screen. The caller ID simply read, "You" underneath it. My number? I stared at it for what felt like an eternity. The phone buzzed once more, then stopped. No voicemail, no text, just silence. I turned it off and went back to bed, half convinced it was a glitch or maybe a prank. But that night, something about the air in the room felt heavier, like I wasn't alone. The next day was normal again, but something inside me was alert, hyper-aware. Every sound in my apartment felt sharper. I even unplugged my phone and turned off my SIM, just to be sure. That night, the call came again. This time, I wasn't dreaming. It happened at the exact same moment, 2:46 a.m., but my phone was off. The screen remained black. No vibration, no lights. And yet, I heard the ringtone, my ringtone, faint, distant, but unmistakably from my own phone. I sat up, heart pounding, and looked at the nightstand. Nothing. Then I noticed the bathroom light was on, but I hadn't turned it on. I walked over, slowly, carefully. The door creaked open, and my breath caught in my throat. My phone was lying on the sink, turned off, dead battery, still playing the ringtone. I picked it up, and the screen lit up for a brief second, just long enough to show me something impossible. Incoming call me answer. Decline, I dropped it. The sound stopped immediately. From that night on, the dreams began. They weren't like normal dreams. They were places, familiar but warped, like walking through a replica of my own home, but things were off. The mirror in the hallway showed the back of my head. The windows revealed streets I didn't recognize. There were doors that hadn't been there before, and clocks that all pointed to 2:46. And sometimes, in the reflection of my turned-off phone, I saw her. A woman with a blurred face, standing behind me. Not angry, not sad, just watching. The third night, I dreamt I answered the call. I don't remember pressing the button, but I heard my voice, except it wasn't me. "Don't wake up yet," it whispered. "You're not alone." I jolted awake. Cold sweat soaked my shirt. My phone was in my hand. I hadn't gone to sleep holding it. I started recording myself sleeping. The first night's footage was normal. Just me tossing and turning. The second night, at exactly 2:46 a.m., the video went black for 17 seconds. When it returned, I was no longer alone in the bed. There was an indentation beside me, a shape under the blanket, unmoving but definitely there. The next frame, it was gone. I don't remember feeling anything, but I woke up with bruises on my arm, like fingers had gripped me tightly in the night. Things escalated. Lights flickered, even with the power off. The mirror in the hallway cracked without a sound. My laptop began opening my contacts by itself. And each time, the highlighted name was mine. I visited a sleep clinic. They strapped me with sensors, watched me overnight. When I woke up, the room was empty. No nurse, no doctor. Just a printed transcript from the EEG monitor with one note. Scribbled in the corner, subject spoke clearly at 2:46 a.m. She's almost through. The clinic called me the next day to apologize. They claimed they never received me. No one remembered checking me in. By the 6th night, I stopped sleeping altogether. But the calls didn't stop. Now, I heard them even when I was awake. My phone rang while I showered, while I cooked, while I blinked. And every time, it was me calling. One time, I picked it up. I shouldn't have. It was my voice on the other end. But it wasn't saying anything. It was breathing. And behind the breath I heard tapping, like fingernails on glass. I looked around, but the only glass nearby was the window. And then I saw her, standing outside, on the 3rd floor. Her face was still blurry, like pixels trying to load, but her hand was against the glass, tapping. I moved out of the apartment the next day. I didn't pack. I didn't care. But the calls followed me. Hotels, guest rooms, even while I was driving. Always at 2:46 a.m. And then one day, my voicemail changed. I never recorded a message. It was always default. But when I dialed it out of paranoia, a voice answered. It was mine. Only one sentence. You're sleeping again. Let her in. I haven't slept in 5 days. The hallucinations have started. Or maybe they aren't hallucinations anymore. I see her face now. Clearer each time. It's mine, but she doesn't blink. She doesn't smile. She just watches me like she's waiting for me to close my eyes. I don't know how much longer I can stay awake. If you're reading this, and your phone rings in the middle of the night with your own number, don't answer. Please, don't let her in. I opened my eyes to the sound of silence. Not the kind of silence you hear in the early morning, soft and calm, but a silence so thick, it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. The ceiling above me was not mine. It was cracked, pale yellow, with a cobweb stretching from one corner to a hanging light bulb that flickered, even though no switch had been flipped. My mattress was hard. The blanket over me was rough and scratchy. There was a sharp, lingering smell. In the air, something like damp wood, old iron, and something else I couldn't place. I sat up slowly, my heart already beginning to race. This wasn't my bed. This wasn't my room. My phone wasn't on the nightstand. There wasn't even a nightstand. Just a single wooden chair in the far corner and a window with curtains drawn shut. I swung my feet to the floor. The wood beneath creaked in protest. I didn't recognize the furniture, the cracked wallpaper, the photos on the wall, black and white portraits of strangers. With empty eyes, I rushed to the window, pulled the curtains open, and froze. Outside, there was no street, no sky, no sound, just fog. Dense, shifting fog that moved like it was alive. I pressed my hand against the cold glass. No condensation, no breeze. Only that thick, unnatural grayness that swallowed everything beyond the window pane. I stumbled backward, trying to make sense of anything. Had I been drugged? Was I dreaming? I ran to the door, twisted the knob. It opened with a groan. Narrow hallways stretched in both directions, dimly lit, carpeted in an ugly moss green. Doors lined the walls, each one slightly ajar. Faint whispers came from somewhere, as though the house was breathing through them. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding small in the vast quiet. No response. I picked a direction and walked. Every door I passed opened just a little more as I neared, but inside, the rooms were empty. Identical beds, identical curtains, identical silence. Like the house was copying itself over and over. A loop. One room had a mirror, cracked right through the center. I stepped in front of it and paused. My reflection was there, but it was delayed. When I blinked, it didn't. When I tilted my head, it just stared. After 5 seconds, it finally copied me, but the smile it gave wasn't mine. I stepped back, slamming the door shut. The hallway lights flickered. For a brief second, I thought I saw a shape, something tall, featureless, standing at the far end. But when the light came back, it was gone. Only the faint sound of footsteps echoed away. I tried the front door, the back door, even windows on the first floor, all sealed, and the fog. It never broke. I began to explore the house more methodically. That's when I noticed things changing. Subtle at first. A photo in the hallway now featured me standing with people I didn't recognize. A teacup in the kitchen had lipstick I'd never worn. A crayon drawing on the fridge had a name I didn't know, Leela. Yet I was alone. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd wake up in a different room. Not a different house, just another copy, or another layer. Like the house was folding over itself, and the rooms began to change. Walls became narrower, windows darker, the whispers louder. On the 4th day, or at least I think it was the 4th, I found the nursery. It had a rocking chair that moved by itself, a crib with a mobile spinning despite no breeze, and a baby monitor on the dresser. Old analog with a glowing green light. I picked it up, pressed my ear to it, breathing, not the soft breath of a child. It was raspy, slow, wet. Then a voice, "Don't let her out." The chair stopped. The mobile froze. I dropped the monitor. When I turned around, the door had closed on its own. I screamed, banged on it. It opened like nothing had happened. The house wanted me to find something or someone. That night, I saw her. I was brushing my teeth in one of the bathrooms, identical to the rest, and I glanced in the mirror. She was behind me. A woman, pale, wearing an old-fashioned white nightgown stained with something dark. Her hair hung over her face, wet, like she'd just come out of a lake. She didn't move. I turned quickly, but no one was there. I looked back at the mirror. She was closer, right behind me. I turned again, nothing. Then she whispered, from right beside my ear, "Stay." I ran out of the room, heart in my throat. But the hall was now different, narrower and darker. Doors on both sides were open, revealing beds with indentations in the shape of bodies, but no one inside. I picked a room, locked the door, and pushed the chair against it. I didn't sleep, but I must have blinked, because the next time I opened my eyes, I was in another room, a different bed. I sat up. There she was, sitting in the chair, watching me. She didn't move, didn't blink. Her eyes were black, glossy, too wide, and she smiled not cruelly but softly, sadly. "I was the first," she said, voice like wind through dead trees. "They made me part of it. Now you are too." I tried to speak, but no sound came. She raised one hand and pointed to the wall. I followed her gaze. Names, hundreds of names etched into the wood, scratched in desperation. The last one, mine. She faded before I could ask anything more. And then, the walls began to move again. It's been weeks, or months. Time doesn't work here. I sleep, I wake, always in a different bed, in a different room. I hear a child crying sometimes. I hear the woman humming lullabies. The monitor still breathes. The house is alive, and I think it's growing. One night, I saw a new name. Scratched below mine, I wasn't alone anymore. And if you're reading this, if you ever wake up in a room that isn't yours, in a bed you don't remember lying in, don't open the door, because that's how she finds you. And once you see her, you never leave. I woke up to the sound of birds, not the harsh, mechanical chirps from my phone alarm, but real birds. Soft, distant warbles through thin curtains. The sheets smelled different, like lavender and something older, dustier. The pillow beneath my cheek wasn't mine either. It was too firm, too clean. I turned my head slowly, feeling the stiffness of a mattress I'd never laid on before. The ceiling above me was wooden, with dark beams and faint cracks. My room didn't have a wooden ceiling. I sat up abruptly. The room was bright, airy, foreign, soft yellow wallpaper, lace curtains, a wooden dresser that creaked as if it breathed. The window was open, letting in a breeze that smelled like rain and soil. A small mirror sat on the dresser. I could see my reflection in it. Barely. I was pale, lips parted in confusion. This wasn't my room. This wasn't my apartment. And I was very, very awake. I climbed out of bed slowly, heart hammering. The floorboards were cold. The kind of cold that creeps into your feet and tells you this house doesn't know you. I tiptoed to the door. My phone wasn't on the side table. My wallet was gone. My bag not here. Everything in this room was too neat, too still. There were no clothes, no books, no signs of life. Just curated coziness. I opened the door. The hallway was narrow, stretching into a corridor lined with closed doors. A faint light came from downstairs. I could hear something ticking, a grandfather clock maybe, and the faint sound of humming. I stepped out. Each footstep echoed softly. The hum grew clearer as I reached the staircase. It was a lullaby, old and low, no words, just a tune meant to put something or someone to sleep. I descended slowly, gripping the railing. It was carved wood, rough in some places, as if clawed or scratched. At the bottom of the stairs was a hallway with framed photos, black and white, faded, all of children with eyes scratched out. I paused. That's when the humming stopped. I turned quickly, heart racing. No one was behind me. The kitchen door creaked open slowly on its own. I inched toward it. Inside, the kitchen looked preserved in time. Floral tiles, a porcelain sink, and a kettle hissing on the stove as if someone had just turned it on. A cup was already on the counter. Steam rose from it. Someone had made tea. For me, I backed away slowly, eyes scanning every corner. That's when I noticed the calendar on the wall. July 1993. I stared at it, trying to breathe. I wasn't born. Until 1997, I ran. I dashed past the scratched-up photos, past the couch covered in a white sheet, and threw open the front door. There was no street, no driveway, just tall, endless trees and thick fog rolling in from nowhere. The moment I stepped onto the porch, the humming started again, louder now. Right behind me, I turned. No one, but there was now a woman's shoe on the staircase. A heel faded and cracked. It hadn't been there a moment ago. I slammed the door shut. Back inside the house, every light was off. The rooms were now slightly darker, the wallpaper peeling in spots, the air filled with that same smell, lavender and decay. I called out hello. My voice was swallowed by the silence. The mirror in the hallway, the one I hadn't noticed before, showed me, but the reflection wasn't in sync. When I moved, it lagged a second behind, and then it smiled. I didn't, I screamed. The mirror cracked in the center, the fracture running through my reflection's eye. I stumbled back and ran up the stairs. The hallway upstairs seemed longer now, stretching farther than it had before. More doors than I remembered. Some were slightly open now. I heard whispering just behind each door, like someone was standing close, waiting for me to knock. I ran back to the bedroom I had woken up in. It felt colder now. The bed was made again, neatly, and the cup of tea was there too, now on the nightstand. Steam rising. I didn't drink it. Instead, I sat on the floor, hugging my knees, staring at the bed, trying to remember going to sleep. Had I drunk something last night? Was this a dream? The window blew open with a loud bang, and outside the sky had turned dark, black clouds twisting unnaturally fast above the treetops. A woman's face appeared in the mirror, not mine, pale, hollow-eyed, wearing a faded nightgown and something that looked like rope burns on her neck. She didn't blink. She whispered, "Don't close your eyes." I blinked. She was gone. But when I looked down, her reflection was still in the mirror, even though the space in front of it was empty. I screamed again, grabbing the blanket and hurling it at the glass. It didn't break. Then I heard footsteps, slow, barefoot, coming up the stairs. The boards groaned one by one. The house was breathing again. Something was coming, something patient. I grabbed the nightstand lamp and crouched behind the bed. The bedroom door creaked open, but no one entered. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then the blanket lifted off the bed, not all at once, but like hands were pulling it upward from underneath. Something or someone was under the bed. I ran for the window, but outside wasn't outside anymore. The trees had vanished. Only a black void remained, like someone had erased the world. Then I heard it again, that lullaby, this time. It came from inside the room. I turned slowly. The bed was empty. The door was closed. The mirror now showed 3 people. Me, the pale woman, and a man with no face. I turned to run, but there was no door anymore. Just a blank wall. I clawed at it, screamed, hit it with the lamp. Nothing. And then everything went dark. I woke up to the sound of birds, lavender and dust in the air. Same bed, same wooden ceiling, same clock ticking softly downstairs. And a teacup, steaming, waiting. But this time, the reflection in the mirror wasn't mine anymore. It didn't move, it didn't blink, and it was smiling. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not mine, not familiar. It was damp, like old wallpaper, mixed with something sour. I opened my eyes slowly, the ceiling above me coated in a dull shade of green, chipped in several places. I wasn't home. This wasn't my bed. This wasn't my room. The bedsheet beneath me was thin, coarse, like hospital linen. There were no windows in the room. Only one wooden door, closed tight. My chest grew tight as I sat up slowly. The bed frame creaked. My phone wasn't on the side table. There was no side table. I tried to stand, but the floor beneath me groaned. With age, as I took a cautious step forward, the door creaked open a little, not enough to see through, but enough to hear. Shuffling, breathing, steps. Slow, deliberate. Hello. My voice cracked. Is anyone there? Silence. I pulled the door fully open. A hallway, narrow and crooked, stretched out. The wallpaper was old-fashioned, floral, stained. Paintings lined the walls, but all their faces were scratched out. Not painted over, gouged out like something angry had scraped them with nails. I walked forward, arms trembling. A distant sound came from down the hall, static like an old TV or radio that had been left on too long. The air grew colder. I didn't remember how I got here. I didn't remember falling asleep. I only remembered brushing my teeth and checking my phone before bed. And now this. I turned a corner and found a small room. An old television sat in the middle, turned to a snow-filled channel, the only light in the space. I walked closer. Suddenly the screen flickered and showed an image, me, asleep, in the bed I had just left. Then I twitched in my sleep, and in the screen I opened my eyes. My real eyes were already open. I wasn't in that bed anymore. But on the screen, I was. The TV shut off with a snap. Behind me, I heard a giggle. Spinning around, I saw nothing, but I felt it. The air shifted. I ran down the corridor. Back the way I came, but the hallway. It wasn't the same. It twisted, elongated. I passed the door that hadn't been there before. I opened it, a bathroom. My face stared back at me in the cracked mirror. I leaned forward, trying to make sense of this, when the reflection blinked. But I hadn't blinked. The reflection leaned closer, moving its lips. I heard the words. Inside my skull, don't go back to sleep. I turned and ran again, heartbeat deafening. I could feel the walls narrowing, the floor shifting beneath me. I pushed open another door and found myself in a nursery. Toys lined the floor. A crib stood in the center. A baby monitor blinked red. I stepped closer. The monitor hissed. Softly, then, I saw them eyes. Inside the crib. Not human, reflective. Watching me, not blinking. I took a step back. The monitor buzzed louder. Then a voice. Robotic, but feminine. Who's with you, Alex? That was my name. But I never told it. I turned to the monitor. What did you say? Static. Then again, louder. Who's with you? No one. I was alone. I was always alone. I backed out of the nursery. The hallway changed again. The floor beneath me wasn't wood anymore. It was carpet, damp, with muddy footprints that weren't mine. I followed them, step by step, until I reached the end of the hall, and found a room with a single lamp. Underneath it sat a bed, my bed. I knew it. Same blanket, same pillow, but it wasn't in my room. It was in this place, this maze. I should have run. I should have screamed. But something pulled me forward. I climbed onto the bed. As soon as my head touched the pillow, I felt weight beside me. Slow, gentle breathing. I turned. She lay next to me. A woman, pale skin, black hair covering her face, her hands curled beneath her chin like a child. She was sleeping. Then, she opened her mouth slowly and whispered without lifting her head. I closed my eyes and still saw you. My blood froze. I rolled off the bed, crawled backward. She sat up, then stood, then walked slowly toward me. I turned, ran, slammed through a door, and woke up. Back in my bed, my real bed, my room, my fan above, my phone on the nightstand. 4:33 a.m. It was just a dream, a nightmare, right? Until I looked at my carpet. Footprints, wet, leading to the edge of my bed, and just beneath the door, a shadow. Standing, waiting.